Thank you for the notification. We'll quickly get started. There's a bit of latency. To start off, thank you all for joining this presentation. While we pull up the presentation, which is still coming up right now. First of all, we'd like to extend our gratitude and thank you to NPTEL for giving us this opportunity to share our experiences with everybody who's watching this at this point in time. My name is Anirudh and I have Advait here with me. We belong to the Strategic Merchant Analytics team here at PayPal. We have close to 6 years of experience working in the data and analytics domain, and we are very excited to share some of our learnings, especially when it comes to the digital payments as well as PayPal segment. We have sort of packaged together all of our learnings, and we want to share as much as possible before you. Now, moving forward, the structure of this particular meeting, we have content ready for around 40 to 45 minutes. We want to be able to go through that and then park some of the question and answer session for the last 10 to 15 minutes. For the people who are there in the Zoom meeting, feel free to unmute yourself in the last 10 to 15 minutes and ask any sort of questions or any discussion points that you would like to, that you would have. And for people who are joining live through the streaming service of YouTube, we'll also be monitoring the chat. So as and when the questions are coming in, we'll take note of it and we'll be trying to address them in a combined manner at the end. Right. So going through the agenda items or the table of contents we have a total of 5 chapters, and the outcome of this entire presentation, what we're trying to do is to give the audience a sense of payment industry as a whole, give a sense of PayPal, what sort of a player are we in the payment space, and what are some of the KPIs that we are tracking, how do we function, basic information about that. And then we'll also touch upon data and analytics with respect to PayPal and the payment industry as a whole, and what sort of journey has it actually taken through. So that is the total agenda that we have planned for this particular session. What we'll do is we'll quickly get started with chapter 1, which is going to lay the foundation for this entire series. And we're going to start with history, right? We're going to start off with the evolution of payments. One of the first things that I think anybody would associate with respect to payments is something that we would have all read in our history books, right? The first thing to start off with is something called as the barter system, which has been there in place for quite a very long time, right? Like hundreds and thousands of years ago, we have had, we have taken note of the barter system that has been there for a long time. So the timeline here starts off with the first method of payment that was recorded by mankind after the barter system, which is metal coins. So somewhere around the 450 BC, we do have civilizations which would have started, transacting in metal coins far behind that as well. But we'd like to just put a number to it, which is 450 BC. And very long later, we have had the first checks that have been started using in terms of transactions. In the 1681 is when we have that. Then we move on to paper money, which came around the 1775. And the bank notes that right now we are familiar with, which has been authorized by the government and which has also been authorized by the issuing banks, those came into picture later in the 1913s, 1915s range. And long time after that is when Bank of America, which still continues to exist as one of the largest issuers when it comes to the US market, had launched their very first credit card, which came around 1958. And it would be surprising to know that it took 20 years after the launch of credit card for us to even get the very first debit card, which came around 1978. And then the era of internet basically started booming. So you would have a lot of prototypes, a lot of proof of concepts around mobile payment, digital payment. All of them start emerging around the later half of the 1990s, mostly the 1997 and 1998. And riding this very, very initial wave of digital and mobile payments was PayPal. And 1999 was when PayPal was officially launched. We will talk a little bit more about what happened after the journey of PayPal, but this is one of the journeys that the payment world has gone through over the years. To give you some sort of a key callouts to wrap your head around some numbers, in 2024, the projected total payment volume that is going to be there in 2024 is almost close to $11.5 trillion, which is a huge number on its own. When we talk about some of the trends that each of the countries are going to go through, we have one example in Sweden, which very recently, in the end of 2023, in the start of 2024, became the very first nation to become cashless. They became 100% digital. And in the years to follow, we will see more and more countries going to add on into this particular list. Last 3 4 years, we have all seen what sort of an impact that UPI was able to contribute to India in terms of our merchants, both the large merchants as well as the small kirana stores, and how they have transformed in the world of digital payments. While talking about some of the key major events that have happened within the evolution of payments, in the near future, we cannot miss the impact of COVID 19, right? So, COVID 19 had an impact across all the industries, and payment definitely was also impacted by COVID. Prior to COVID, the industry as a whole, the e-commerce industry, the digital payments industry was definitely growing, but the growth rate was around 6 to 7%. Post COVID, what COVID had done is basically accelerated this entire space of e-commerce in the world of digital adoption. And post COVID, we are seeing that the increase in the adoption rate is almost 8% to 9%. And for 2028 and 2029, the projections are almost growing yearly or annually at around 10 to 11%, right? So these are some of the key callouts that we wanted to make to get your head around some of the key events that have happened in the payment space. Now, what we looked about is a double click onto PayPal alone and how its journey has been right from 1999 to now. So, over to Advait for that.
Thanks, Anirudh. So, as Anirudh explained previously, payments has been evolving through centuries and through millennia. It is very clear that it is since the late 90s that the digital payments revolution has started, and PayPal has always led and been in the forefront of the same, and it continues to do so. As of now, PayPal is one of the top players, or probably among the top one or two players when it comes to the holistic payments system. And we'd like to think about PayPal as a representative of the overall payments, online payments journey. And we would like to talk a little about how PayPal evolved as a company from 90s all the way until where we are currently. So everything started at around 1998 when Max Levchin and Peter Thiel formed a company called Confinity, of which PayPal was one of the entities. Very quickly, they reached a 1 million users mark, and in 1999, PayPal was officially launched as a separate product. So very quickly, again in 2000, Confinity merged with Elon Musk's X.com, and we kind of became a same company, and it was called X.com going forward. And in 2001, the name of X.com was again changed to PayPal. By 2002, PayPal went public, and then eBay acquired PayPal. Soon after that, in 2004, PayPal's revenue surpassed $1 billion, and we went mobile with text payments in 2006. In 2010, we were already available in 25 different currencies, indicating the geographical spread of how online transactions have spread across the world. And at the same time, in 2010, a PayPal app was also developed for Android, as a result of which we saw close to 100 million users just in the year 2011. Since then, there have been several key acquisitions, Braintree, Venmo, Honey, to name a few, and the company expanded very rapidly, and it spun off from eBay in 2015, and it got listed as a separate company in the year 2015 in Nasdaq. As of 2020, PayPal exceeded $100 billion in terms of total payment volume for the very first time, that too in a single quarter, and this is a remarkable achievement in our purview. So 2021 is around the time frame when the COVID pandemic was very prevalent across the world, and as Anirudh mentioned, the growth rates have improved substantially before and after the pandemic, and PayPal continues to follow that trend as well. So now let's take a quick look at where we are in 2023. We have close to 400 million active consumer accounts and 35 million active merchant accounts. Consumers are customers of PayPal who wish to use PayPal for any of their transaction, either for sending money or for receiving money. And merchants are those who wish to integrate or those who use PayPal in their websites or other platforms to receive money from consumers and then process payments. So as a result of which, we have close to 25 billion payment transactions in the year 2023, and that sums up to roughly around $1.5 trillion in terms of the total payment volume. So this is more than the GDP of certain countries in the G12, the top 20 list. So having said this, PayPal has such a huge impact in terms of the overall TPV that we process every year. And as you can see, the growth of the industry has been very phenomenal. Like in the 90s, we were at about late 90s, we were at about 1 million users, and right now we're at about 400 million active users. So in just a period of 25 years, we have grown so much, and we can very clearly say that the online payments industry has also grown so much, and it will continue to do so going forward. Now, so we know that there are 25 billion payment transactions which are going, but what is the fundamental reason for all of these? It's simply because there are consumers or customers who wants to either send or receive money, or merchants who want to receive payments for products that they sell online. Okay, so that's kind of how everything started, and that's kind of the basis of everything. And let's see how people generally do it. So when a customer has to transact with PayPal, they will definitely have to add some of their funding instruments into the wallet. So what you see on your screen are just a basic mix of funding instruments which a customer could add to the PayPal wallet. So debit cards, credit cards, bank in our payments term we call it ACH, or the account clearing house. Then we have PayPal balance, which is the wallet balance that we think about, and then we have PayPal credit, wherein certain customers who are credit worthy are given this benefit of using for transactions. So apart from functioning as a regular wallet, there are several other advantages as well. Some of them being, say for example, you could use multiple FIs for a single transaction, and there's an option by which you can use a backup funding instrument, so that in case a transaction fails, you have through your primary funding instrument, you could use your backup instrument to pay up without missing the deadline. So these are certain features that PayPal offer. So now that we've seen what PayPal as a company is, and how consumers use PayPal to transact, I think it is very important for us to learn the entities which are involved in the process of an online payment. So this chapter we'll be looking at the entities which are involved, then a few key metrics which define the health of an online company, payments company, and then how an online transaction generally works, and what kind of data is generated through that. So moving into the entities which are involved, everything starts with a customer. The intent of this entire flow is customer has to spend money on the merchant's website, and the merchant receives the funds into his account through an online mode. So that's the whole objective of it. Okay, now what happens is a customer approaches a merchant's website, keys in the details, and those details are sent to a payment gateway. The responsibility of the payment gateway is to receive the details from the merchant provided by the customer, encrypt it, and then send it to the merchant's bank's processor. Okay, the processor basically does the function of checking the details which the payment gateway has sent. Processor has a lot more details to verify than what the customer has provided, and once the verification is successful, it is then passed on to the credit card interchange. In this case, it has been marked as credit card interchange, but this is applicable for all types of cards that we generally use. So this credit card interchange is basically nothing but your card brand. For example, if it's MasterCard or a Visa card, so that's what it is. The data from the processor is sent to the interchange, where they verify the details and they do a lot more checks from their end, and then finally pass it on to your card's issuing bank. Say for example, you have a card which you spent on the merchant's website, and that bank, it's actually from Citibank, and it's a MasterCard. So basically from the processor of the merchant, it goes to MasterCard for verification, and once MasterCard verifies it, it then moves on to Citibank for further verification. So here a lot of other checks are done, and basically whatever checks have been done in the previous steps is verified as to whether it is true or not. And once that happens, it checks whether the sufficient funds are available for this transaction to happen. And once all its checks are concluded, it sends a message as to whether this transaction can go through or not, and it passes it along the chain again. So it again reaches to the credit card interchange, the processor, the gateway, and finally to the merchant that, okay, this transaction can go through or it cannot go through. If it can go through, the merchant concludes the transaction and then starts the order processing. And simultaneously, the merchant's account also receives the funds from the customer's account. This either happens through batch processing or sometimes even in real time. So there are so many entities involved, and each of these entities try to make money through this process. And you might even find some of these entities are held by different companies. Say for example, Chase could be a merchant bank account, and it also has a processor of its own. Okay, and you might find multiple companies trying to stay awake in more than one of these entities here. And the we've just marked the types of cuts that each of them take, and the exact terminology with which they refer to. That's just for reference. Now anyways, let's try to probably think about the transactions as a as an example. Let me take a quick example where a customer tries to send $100 to a merchant. Let's say he's purchasing a product from a merchant's website for $100. So what this technically means is the customer is sending $100. Does the merchant receive $100 on his end? That is definitely not the case. Okay, because in between, like we have PayPal or other payment service providers, who work with the merchant to look at a take rate. Okay, so take rate is basically a very key metric tracked by all payment service providers, and this is a contract between the merchant and the payment service provider. In this case, let's say PayPal is having a take rate of 5%. This is negotiated with the merchant, and hence when the customer sends $100 for this particular payment, PayPal takes 5% of it and then sends the remaining to the merchant, which is about $95. So of this take rate, basically there are a number of components after that as well. Okay, so 5% is the take rate. When it is applied on the TPV, it basically comes to $5. So this is basically what we call as the revenue. $5 being the revenue. Does PayPal get to keep everything of it? No, that is definitely not the case. We have a lot of costs involved in every transaction, or more most of the transactions based on what are the types of funding instruments being used for each of the transaction. And say, to give you a rough example, we saw so many entities in the previous slide, and each of them have a cut to take, right? So those cuts go out from this $5, and this is again an agreement between PayPal and each of the other entities like the processor, the interchange, and so on. Okay, so that counts as cost. And this is something which analytics looks at very seriously in the name of transaction expense as well, where we try to optimize on how we spend money, and if we are able to save anywhere on it, it directly improves our overall profit at the end of the day. Okay, and there's another component which I've mentioned with $0, which is loss. This may not be true for all the transactions. So losses are also a part of online payments processing. If I have to give you an example, let's say a fraudulent, a seller is available online, and he tries to lure a customer into buying something, and he doesn't send the product, and then he goes, out of contact. In such a case, what happens is PayPal does all the work. At the end of the day, because of the buyer protection and the seller protection policy which PayPal has, they will have to refund the customer the entire amount that was paid. And basically, whatever money which PayPal had paid all these intermediaries in between will actually count towards a loss for PayPal for that particular transaction. And subsequently, that information about the laws and why that particular seller was not able to be contacted, or why it goes on, is a separate analytics process, and it goes into risk. And such sellers are categorized separately as high risk, and we try to exclude them from the system. This is one benefit which we offer the consumers and also the sellers, that we try to have only the trustworthiest of the partners available for transactions. So at the end of all this, everything boils down to a metric called the margin. Okay, margin is basically the revenue minus cost minus loss. In this case, it's $2.5. So margin is a very key metric when it comes to determining the health of the company. everything is important here. Actually, these are all like extremely important financial metrics for any payment service provider. Let's take the case of TPV. In this case, TPV, or the total payment volume, is basically the amount value for your particular transaction. If it's $100, let's take a company which does over $100 billion of TPV every year. Next year, if like it sends $125 billion worth of TPV, it simply means that a lot of customers are liking this service provider more, and hence the TPV is increasing. That sends a very positive message to the market, and that your company is performing really good because it is attracting a lot of customers, and eventually everything will translate down to better margins, which eventually the final the company gets to keep. Okay, so that's kind of like where the profit everything lies. So as you can see here, there are a lot of cases where revenue is really good, but the margins aren't really great. And optimizing on revenue, margin, cost, loss, everything is a part of financial analytics, and it's extremely important to monitor each of them, not just through the financial terms, but even when you go down on it technically, right? There are several aspects that can control any of these financial metrics. So when you look at financial metrics, it's just not about financial metrics. There are a lot of technicalities. Even your product's performance affects each of these directly. So analytics connects everything at one point. So that's how it is. Now we've looked at how the financial style of analytics goes, and I'll probably get to a more technical thing. So what you see on your screen is basically the PayPal checkout flow. Okay, the customer comes in, he keys in all the details, he clicks on login, and then it gives you the shipping address, the type of card that you have for available for the transaction, and then finally the amount after it has been successful. Now this is a simple process. From a customer's point of view, it is just one item. But from an engineering perspective, and from how it has been built, right? When you enter in the details of your name and password and you click login, there is an event generated. There are several hundreds of components within each product, which determines how the data has to flow, and finally how the transaction passes on. Okay, so when you click on login, it verifies your details. That becomes an event, and once that happens, the shipping address is taken from the merchant. That is one event. And the list of funding instruments that you have, like, it has to check which of these instruments are usable for a particular transaction, which is not. Compliance, there are several rules which run on the background, hundreds and probably thousands of rules which run in the background to say that you can use this particular funding instrument for this transaction. And once you click pay now, whatever chart we saw a couple of slides ago, right? Everything has to happen within a second or a couple of seconds. Mostly it's within milliseconds, and finally you say you see the final page where you've paid the actual money. So this is what happens, and it involves hundreds of events. Just to give you a rough example of how many data points are generated per attempt, right? At a very, very high level, this is not even close to what it could be on a real time. For you, it's just probably one attempt. Okay, but every attempt probably has around 100 events. Assuming it has around 100 events, and there are 10 different attributes per event, it is 1,000 data points per attempt. And if it is per attempt, 1,000 data points, for the scale that we do, which is about 25 billion transactions, it comes up to almost like 25 trillion data points for any given year. Now, are you going to be sure that you'll be able to work upon all these 25 trillion data points at once? That's certainly not going to be the case for any analyst. There are different ways of doing it. Just before I pass it on to Anirudh, where he will talk about how each of these are divided among different organizations within the company and how it goes on, right? One more point is, see, we talked about how the financial side of analytics might work and how the technical flow is. Obviously, I'll not be able to give out the actual technical flow because of various reasons, but at a high level, it's not just that. Even when you look at the placement of each of these items in the checkout screen or whatever you see on the app, there is a lot of science behind it. Say, for example, if the PayPal has to be in this particular font, okay, they'll have to test so many variations for it. They'll have to check the color. If they have to check the color, there will be so many variations for it, and whichever suits customers the best, they run a lot of A/B tests, and then it proceeds forward. To just give you a rough example, Google somewhere in around 2009, right? They tested almost like 41 shades of blue through A/B tests, through multivariate analysis, to understand what which shade of blue is more favorable for customers to come in and then make use. So whatever you might think as something very minute, or whatever you might think as very little which may not affect, is actually not the case. Everything that you see is very strategically placed based on a scientific or a mathematical decision that has been done. So now I'll just pass it on to Anirudh, where he'll talk in detail about how a structure is. The org structure could be, and how the life cycle of analytics could be. Over to you, Anirudh.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Advait. So, just hearing whatever Advait had to present and then sort of connecting it back to the initial slide that we were seeing, the payment system has definitely evolved. And with the evolution, what we are seeing is the complexity is, increasing, right, day by day. And payment as a whole right now is a very complex system. And with any complex system, what we are currently seeing with the age of digital payments is huge number of data points that are coming in, right? So for any organization, very similar to that of PayPal or any payments organization for that matter, requires a very structured organization, right? It requires proper team structures that need to be present, who are consuming each of these data points and trying to see how they can actually get better and better. And this is also one of the segue for data and analytics into the entire organization, right? So if you focus on this particular slide, what we have at a very brief or a very high level are the various teams and structures, right? This is what we also call as the business units that are present. This is not just for any payments company. This might be definitely can be taken over for any product company as well. So you have, the basics of the human resources, you have the product related teams, you have technology related teams that are coming in. Then obviously sales and marketing becomes a very important aspect of your entire team. You have finance, you have audit, and then you have general counsel and the other support teams which are also a part of this entire thing, right? Now, once analytics and data, right now we have seen that there is huge number of data points that is available for us. Now if we need to start working on the analytics and data science journey, then how do we start it, right? For an organization, how does it go about adopting this entire data science and analytics strategy? So that is the operating model that we're going to see right now. If we focus on the center bottom of the screen, we have something called as a COE model, right? COE stands for Center of Excellence. So generally, whenever there is analytics and data science starting, it starts off with a pool of resources, and these pool of resources have different functions, right? They could be analysts, they could be data scientists, they could be ML engineers. All of them come together and form a small team. And then what they do is they start catering analytics as a service to each of the business units that are present within the payments ecosystem or the org in this particular case. So a couple of them they'll go and work with the technology department. A couple of them would go and work with the merchant or the consumer teams or the product teams. And then they'll identify small prototypes and proof of concepts that they can build over there, right? And while they do that, they spend around 3 to 4 months understanding the business, building the prototypes. Once they are done with it, they come back to the central pool and then they move on to different projects, right? So this particular phase is what the COE actually stands for. And the outcome within this particular phase is for each of the business units to understand what is the value proposition of data and analytics. So what can insights actually do for them? How is it going to directly affect their business decision making? So these are some of the things that the business units will be constantly evaluating. And within the COE model, the pool of resources are going to fight and bring out what are some of the advantages of using data and analytics and data science combined, and try to put it out there for the remaining of the business units, right? Typically this entire COE model, depending on the size of the company, could run either for a period of many months or it could even last for many years. Once a certain point or a certain balance is reached between what analytics can offer and how open each of the business units are to consuming data and making that a core part of their strategy, the second step in the entire model is the COE model breaks open, and each of the pool of resources that we have in COE, they'll start getting distributed vertically for each of the business units that are there, right? And this journey of moving from a COE model into a vertical model is what will define the analytics maturity of the entire organization, right? And this is a very key point to note. Now, how does this affect an aspiring analyst or an aspiring data scientist? So if you take the top 500 companies of the world, which is called, can be categorized as the Fortune 500 companies of the world, if you are going as an analyst and working over there, you'll typically find that they would have already broken from the COE model and they are already in the vertical model when it comes to data and analytics. Data and data science is basically a core part of all the decisions that they do, right? Even in HR, when we talk about HR and people analytics, there also there will be analysts who will be supporting them. You could be working in PayPal, but you might actually be doing marketing analytics or sales analytics for that matter. So these are some of the things that you need to understand. But if we move to a company which is relatively newer, let's say it's a startup, then where you will end up on a different side of the entire coins, right? So you'll start off with the basics and then you'll build the entire COE model and then you'll go about it. So that is pretty much defines the entire org structure. Now, what we want to talk about is the life cycle of analytics within each of the organization, right? So I'm going to just talk about a little bit the theory aspect of things, and then what I will do is I'll connect it along with an example based on our team. So our team is the merchant analytics. I'll try to take an example and see how we have gone from the stage 1 to stage 3 or 4 and what are we aspiring to do. So in this particular chart, what we have done is the x-axis is the analytics maturity. The y-axis is going to be the business impact that we will be able to create. And we have divided the entire journey into 4 divisions over here, namely descriptive, inquisitive, predictive, and then prescriptive. Descriptive is basically going to be the start. The instrumentation team has done their job. They have given you the data, right? After that, what next? Everything next basically comes into the descriptive analytics aspect of things, which starts with the basics of whatever we have learned in analytics and data science. The basic data cleaning, exploratory data analysis, trying to understand what each of the dimensions mean and how do they connect to the business, right? Those kind of, and then forming the basic reporting framework. So all of this falls under the descriptive analytics. And while doing this entire exercise, what we'll be looking at is trying to understand from a business point of view, who are our stakeholders, what is important to them, what sort of business decisions do they take on a day-to-day basis. All of this will form your stage 1. And then once this entire stage is done, you will move on to the next stage, which is the inquisitive analytics, which is all about insights, right? What we need to understand is data and insights go hand in hand, but insights generally take some amount of preparation from a data perspective, also an understanding of a business. Only then we'll actually be able to start generating insights which will be consumable by the business. So inquisitive analytics, or the second stage of your analytics life cycle, is where we will be insights focused. And for this, we will start building solutions or frameworks in the form of dashboards, which will be narrative, which will be very in line with the day-to-day business decisions that each of our stakeholders are taking. What are the KPIs that are important to them? And then we sort of go ahead and create a framework for ourselves, which is going to not only enable us, but also our stakeholders to use the dashboard, play with the tools, and try to start generating insights. So that is the second aspect of things. And then we move on to stage 3, which is exploring the power of machine learning and automation. And that's where the predictive analytics sort of comes into picture, right? This is a slightly more mature form of analytics. So here we have already laid the groundwork for basic insights. We have enough dashboards and solutions that are there. Now we are looking for the small pockets of opportunities where machine learning can be used, as well as what are some of the areas where automation can be used to make our work a little bit faster and reduce the time to insights, right? So one of the things that I would have called out over here when it comes to predictive analytics is anomaly or outlier detection, right? And one would assume that anomaly or outlier detection basically is a part of descriptive analytics because it is a core member of EDA, or the exploratory data analysis. But the outlier detection or anomaly, what we are referring to over here, is a combination of dimensions along with a few business rules added on top of it. Whereas in EDA, what you will do is you will look at it at one dimension at a time, look at what are some of the expected values, and then calculate the anomaly. So that is how this anomaly and outlier detection is different from what we have over there. And by finding these business anomalies, since we have business rules on top of it, what we will be able to do is directly try to act on top of it and give suggestions in terms of what can be done on top of certain business anomalies, right? So these are some of the things that falls into the predictive analytics. And then the last one, which is prescriptive analytics, right? As the name suggests, is also one of the most advanced form of analytics and data science, where we are not only finding what the problem is, but we are also prescribing what the solution has to be, right? That is the end goal of what we are trying to achieve. And a lot of teams or a lot of organizations are in this particular journey. Right now, I would say that the merchant analytics team that we are a part of, we are in the predictive analytics zone. We have traveled from descriptive to inquisitive to predictive, and we are trying to go to the prescriptive analytics space. And that's where most of the Gen AI, most of the network theory, system dynamics, those sort of things we have to start exploring, so that we can go to the highest level, and thereby also ensuring that we are having the highest business impact when it comes to that, right? So this is the theoretical aspect of things. Let's go and let me take an example of merchant analytics, and let's try to see how we have traversed through each of these stages. Now, before we go into this example, you would need to understand what is that one KPI which we are currently responsible for as merchant analytics. And we'll talk about three stakeholders who are going to set this entire story together, right? The first one is going to be approval rate, right? Now, what is approval rate in payments? Pretty simple. Let's take an example. There is a merchant who has a product, it is online, and he has PayPal, that he has partnered with PayPal to accept payments from customers who want to buy that particular product. Let's say there are 100 customers who are basically trying to purchase it. They're making a transaction attempt, and then they're trying to make a transaction attempt to buy the product from the merchant. Now, out of the 100 transaction attempts that are coming in, let's take a hypothetical case where 90 of them are a success, 10 of them have failed, right? The 10 of those that have failed could have failed for a variety of reasons. Let's take an example of a customer related problem. I have a card, but I actually don't have a balance. I'm attempting a payment, it fails because of insufficient funds, right? That could be one of the reasons. The second reason could be I would have entered maybe a wrong PIN number or a wrong CVV or a wrong card number, right? That could maybe stop the payment. This is from a customer side. You could also have problems from the issuer or the network side. Maybe the platform is down, or maybe the issuer has blocked your card for some reason. So these are all examples of why a transaction could actually fail. Now, in this particular scenario, 90 is the total number of successful transactions, divided by 100, which is going to be your total transactions that is coming in. Hence, your overall approval rate for that particular merchant for this particular day is going to be 90%, right? Very simple and straightforward formula. But what we need to notice, this formula is very, very important, and it directly points to the revenue opportunity for the merchant, right? It's a direct indicator. More the approval rate, more revenue that the merchant is going to get. And in turn, PayPal or any payments processing platform is also going to earn more, because our revenue is also dependent on the merchant's revenue, right? So this is the approval rate. Now let's talk about stakeholders. We already know the merchants, what they are, that they are one important stakeholders. We'll talk about analytics, right? In this case, it's merchant analytics. We as a team, what we are responsible for is how do we optimize approval rates for our merchants? How do we make sure that we are finding areas of improvements of approval rates for our merchants? This is what our primary goal is, right? So we are called the strategic merchant analytics. In the middle, there is one internal stakeholder from the PayPal side. They are called as CSMs, and they are nothing but customer success managers. Think of them as the single point of contact between the merchants and all the other internal stakeholders. They are responsible for maintaining the relationship with the merchant, right? So now, setting up this entire foundation, let's go into the next slide where we'll talk about how the entire workflow is, right? So our day-to-day activity is what we have tried to depict over here, but we have tried to take down all the complex elements and try to depict it in a very simple fashion, right? This is what we call as stage zero. Let's say this is one step even before the descriptive analytics part of it, right? So in the when we look at right at the start, the merchants reach out to us, or in this particular case, the CSMs, for a couple of reasons. One of them is they require a data report, right? And this report could be, they might require some financial reports in terms of how many transactions were approved in the last month, so on and so forth. And then we also have something called as identification of a problem. Now, what a problem here means that the approval rates, let's say for last week, was lower than the baseline that the merchant is used to seeing. that is a problem for them. So they come up with that problem, right? So in both of these scenarios, they reach out to the CSMs, and in turn, the CSMs reach out to the analytics team, which is us. And like Advait had already walked through, we have so many merchants, but our team is quite small. So we have our own prioritization framework where we pick and choose the kind of problems that we have to solve, which in turn will give us a big impact. And then we work on it, we solve it, and then we communicate it back to the merchants, right? Now, one of the downsides with this entire way of working is, number one, since we are a very small team, the communication time that it is going to take for a merchant to get answers is going to be huge. Number two, this is a completely 100 percentage reactive way of working, right? We are all dependent on the merchants to reach out to us, then we act upon it and then give them back stuff, right? So this is the key challenges when it comes to stage zero. Now, the first thing that we wanted to sort of address over here is address the reporting element of it, right? So when you follow the purple, what we have done is we have worked with the data engineering and instrumentation teams and tried to come up with a self-serve reporting tool. And we have also trained the CSMs to use this particular tool. And what will happen is there is enough flexibility that is available in the tool where the CSMs, based on the request that they're getting from the merchants, can pick and choose what sort of dimensions they need, or how to build the report, what is the time period for the report, add in all those dimensions and filters, create a custom report for themselves, and then quickly share it back to the merchants, right? This took quite a bit of a time, but we were able to achieve this particular journey and then take that reporting portfolio completely off analytics. We won't get that. We were only focusing on the problem ad hoc analysis and finding insights. So that was the only thing that we were focusing on. In this particular case, apart from the usual stakeholders that we have, which is the CSMs, the product and analytics, in this particular stage, we require a lot of help from data engineering and the instrumentation team, right? Moving forward, we went into stage two. So here what we did is we wanted to attack the identification of a problem segment and try to build some sort of a solution framework which will help us get to the solution faster. So this is where pretty much most of our dashboard suits came into picture, right? So once we had built this, again, there was a training module where we had trained CSMs enough to sort of start using the tool. But then you'll also see a dotted line between that and analytics, right? When we moved into the stage two, we were still getting some of the questions or some of the problems to be solved from the merchants, but then we were only getting complex problems to solve. The simple problems that were to be solved were solved by the CSMs themselves using the frameworks that we had built for them, and then they had communicated that to the merchant, right? So whatever had reached us after that point was only complex problems to solve. And from an analyst perspective, moving to stage two actually gave us that freedom and actually gave us like a good learning experience because we were solving only complex problems and no repetitive problems or simpler problems were coming to us. At this particular point, when we look at the stakeholders, we were working a lot with the business intelligence teams, the BI teams, because the entire self-serve deep dive tools had a lot of front end elements and views that had to be developed. So they came in as one of the stakeholders in order to get us particular stage two. Okay. Moving forward to the third stage where we are right now, we wanted to sort of address the first point where merchants were giving us all the problems, right? In terms of they were identifying the problem, they wanted a report and such. So here what we did is we built an ML backed anomaly detection intelligent alerting framework. And what this had done for us is this framework had identified anomalies or problems within a merchant that even the merchant could not be aware of, right? The granularity of the insights that we were getting from this particular ML model was very granular, and we were also able to connect the dots across the merchant. So when a merchant looks at it, he'll only look at it from his problem. But what we were able to do is to look at industry-wide problems and then sort of connect that into the pipeline. And for us in the stage three, data scientists and ML engineers were the folks that we had to work with the most, right? So this is a very brief journey from where we got on the left-hand side, which is stage zero, to where we are on the right-hand side, which is stage three. And this took us almost 2 to 3 years. We have depicted it in the 3 to 4 slides, but it definitely is a time-consuming process with a lot of feedback that is being incorporated, right? So this is one of the examples that we have. And also in terms of what the future holds for us with respect to this particular team, as well as looking at PayPal as a whole, we wanted to give some sense about that as well, right? So there are 5 things which PayPal as a whole has identified that this is going to be the trend that will be there in the payments industry, and we need to start working towards it, right? One of the first thing is your experience as a consumer, as a merchant. When you land inside the app, how seamless the experience is for you. That is going to be number one. And number two is engagement within the app, right? Especially given the current age when PayPal is definitely not the sole payments provider, you have so many options to choose from. Why would somebody pick PayPal for that matter, right? And those are all the experience and engagement related metrics that we are currently focusing on. And not just PayPal, the rest of the companies would also be focusing on that from a payments angle. Artificial intelligence is definitely there to stay, and we want to use that for personalization, right? Every customer is unique, so we want to be able to personalize the recommendations for each of them in a unique way, and that's where AI is coming in, right? Cryptocurrency is definitely here to stay as well. PayPal has already launched its cryptocurrency, which is PYUSD, and we are currently looking at in the future to scale it and make it a part of normal transactions as well. So that is definitely also going to be one of that. And the last one is platform unification, right? And this is again something that is required for the recent age where every company is acquiring some company, or there is a merger that is always taking place. And whenever there are 2 to 3 systems that are coming together, we need to make sure that they are all coming together in a very seamless way, and we are able to march towards that one outcome that we have planned for ourselves. And for this, a lot of technological layer has to come in together, which is also going to be one of the prime focus for PayPal moving forward as well, right? So with this, we have come to the end of our presentation. I think on the dot 45 minutes, we were able to wrap it up. We'll try to open this for any open questions that you guys have, or if any discussion points that you might have, we'd be more than happy to address that. Any questions? I don't see. I don't see a lot of questions on the chat. So, any live questions from the audience, or any thoughts? Need not be a question.
It
But
could
then,
just be a discussion,
yeah.
where you could engage with us on what is coming, what has happened. But I think we're good then.
Yep.
It'll be good to conclude the session with this. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, guys.